One first question from Martine Vermeer. She asks, Claudio, if you can repeat the chosen categories, name, style, and what comes after this.
Yes, of course, the categories are work type, materials, techniques, and periods and places, periods of span times.
Thank you very much, Claudio. We don't have any other questions so far, but I have a question for all you guys. First of all, thank you very much for the presentations. It was really, really good. And it was really nice to see so many known faces here. It's a pleasure to be here. And one more time, I apologize for my late arrival at the room. So my question for you is, if you can talk a little bit more of challenges and impacts of legacy data and former and actual cataloging standards for the initiatives you just presented to us. What kind of challenges you faced trying to put all this data together for these projects? And what also interests me is to understand if these new demands for data, for documentation data from museums, are already changing the way museums are collecting and cataloging data from their collections. So if you can talk a little bit more about this from your perspective, your institutions, I think it would be great. Thank you. We can start with in the same order, maybe Alexei first, then Jonathan, and so on.
Oh, my perspective is somewhat unique in this because we are a young institution, so we don't have too much legacy. So what I was talking about, what I was trying to, for example, I was so impressed with the results of Jonathan's work. I have seen it before. Jonathan and his colleagues at MoMA Museum as a presentation where of presenting the works, photographs of the editions with photos in them. So and seeing how difficult it is to collect the data and collect the to do a reverse image search to place objects on the other objects, I decided that it would be easier because we are young, so we are starting to document it in advance. So I built an interface for our team of for our museum where you can just we also document our exhibitions with photographs, and so we just with a drag and drop we put the actual objects in them, and so we have all the data not as a legacy and in different documents we haven't connected already. So one of the impacts of the seeing how difficult it is to interpret and collect data from different sources is to plan ahead to make it easier for the future. Okay, I give you the mic.
Thank you, Alexei.
Let me know if I don't address all aspects of the question. But I think for me and gathering together exhibition data, there were a number of specific challenges. Firstly, it's in paper. So it's all about finding efficient ways to get it off of paper and into a data system. We don't have any money to pay for high quality processing by computer, and all this old tabular data isn't easily read, or translated. So that's the first issue. But what we found is that within the archives and libraries, we're very close to where the documents are. They're literally right in front of us. And that's the first issue that we solved. It's harder for someone else on the other side of the museum to do the same project because they don't know where the documents are and they have to go over to the archives to get them. But for us, they're literally right in front of us. And that makes it very convenient for us to be the ones who turn that into data. because we don't have to go far for them. Secondly, exhibition data in most data systems, and MoMA uses TMS, the museum system. The idea of exhibitions is very simplified. So whatever data you can put in there isn't very complex. Like there's no good way to say that an exhibition is part of a series or a program. And then how they handle traveling exhibitions is effective for managing artworks, but not effective for describing the exhibitions themselves. And then of course, MoMA and the data system MoMA uses doesn't have any interest in describing the exhibition at another museum, only the works that it's tracking their movement. So that's a main barrier, is when we build this data, where can we put it? How can we make use of it? And it's will ever deploy the traveling exhibition. But meanwhile, we can use it to answer queries, we can publish it on GitHub and take other steps to get it out there. But those are some of the main challenges.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Claudio, can you?
Of course, thank you, Gabriel. Look, the digital humanities and also the digital transformation implies different approaches. I mean, a very brand new approaches to, for example, to document terminologies. We discover that the classical approaches, for example, from the anthropology or the ethnology, are still very useful in particular cases as the Mexican case, with which this community that doesn't have this very consolidated text producing texts. So the challenge is to work with both approaches and have the best of both approaches. That is.
Thank you. Luciana?
Hi, Gabriel. Nice to meet you here, to see you. Yeah, so here in Brazil, how you know, it's always very complex to deal with legacy documentation, as many institutions do not use the standards and do not have informatized systems to management the collections. So often the documentation is in PDF, Word, and other documents like this, and it's very hard to do this kind of translation to computerized systems. So in case of this project in partnership with UNAM, however, this was facilitated because we used it as example 2 museums that had already had their documentation treated and organized in Tainacan. So in this case, it was simpler. And that's why we choose this institution to do the mapping exercise of the metadata model of the Brazilian Institute of Museums to the object ID. So I think in this case, it's a kind of case situation, and we don't have many problems to do this kind of mapping the documentation.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, guys. We already have some questions here, and the first one is from for the Tainacan presentation. It's a question from Camila Aparecida da Silva from Brazil. And she wants to know if you consider other metadata standards for its application in the museum showed as case study besides Object ID and Dublin Core.
Nowadays in Tainacan, you just have the standard inside Tainacan. It's not Object ID, it's just Dublin Core. And we consider other patterns, but here in Brazil, we don't have much use for these patterns, because the majority of museums doesn't even know these patterns and these models of metadata. And it's a kind of a very far discussion here. Here we nowadays very concerned about to do the basic documentation, and I think Tainacan is built for this, for the basic documentation. And we just put inside Tainacan Dublin Core, because it's the, I don't know, for us here is the basic pattern and model to initiate this discussion in museums here in Brazil.
Thank you, Luciana. The next question is for
Gabriel. I think your microphone is closed.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Luciana. The next question is for Jonathan. Jonathan, the question is from Victoria Donnellan from the British Museum. And the question is, do you have any analysis or evaluation of who is actually using your fantastic web resource? I can imagine it being extremely valuable for academic researchers of art history and or museum studies. But do you see it having a wider audience too?
Well, I certainly do, but that's because I find it very exciting. 4 years ago, we put the core exhibition data of about 1929 to 1990 online on GitHub, and it doesn't get as much use as the MoMA collection data. I think people they have an easier understanding of what to do with collection data, of how to look at it and ways to analyze it. And I think exhibitions aren't as transparent in that way for many people out in the data world or in the cultural data world. But it has been very useful on the website. We know that users, that this answers our researchers' needs in how they seek and find information. And it answers our own personal needs for having to access the information quite frequently as archivists and librarians, and let alone the rest of the MoMA staff. So with the traveling exhibition data itself, I do hope that which is still in the midst of being compiled and hasn't been made public, I certainly hope that by making it public, by promoting it, we can encourage its use, but also encourage other museums and institutions to start building their own data. Because I think we need to reach a critical mass of this data being available. And since MoMA first made its web pages available in 2016, we've seen more museums putting exhibition data online. And so more projects are coming to fruition. And I think that all helps build towards increased usage of this data and novel ways to use it.
Thank you, Jonathan. The next question is for Luciana. It's for our last speaker. It's from Chiara Marchini from the Institute for Museum Research in Berlin. And her question is, have the questions of the diagnostic survey that was carried out published online? If so, would it be possible to obtain a link for this diagnostic survey?
Just in Portuguese or Spanish. So you can use a Google Translator to, I don't know, Italian or English, but we just send a paper to a curator about this research, and if it will be accepted, we can have a report, a kind of report in English. But if you need, I just send here my email in. I don't know, the chat is not available. But I think in the presentation we have our emails, and you can write me, and I send you this article in English, and I think it will be good.
Thank you, Luciana. So for now, we don't have any other questions from outside. I don't know if you guys want to ask questions for each other. If you don't, I have one more, but you first, please, if you have it. No? Oh, I wanted to ask you something related to my first question. I'm thinking about realities like we have in Brazil, as Luciana told us and Claudio presented to us in Mexico also. It's a reality in Latin America and probably in other parts of the world, when we have a very hard, difficult trying to have a data structure from museums. So we don't have this kind of critical mass Jonathan just talked about to launch this new project, and we are actually trying to extract the first bulk of data from our collections. So I want to know if you have addressed this kind of issue as well, and how can we cope with this? Is there some new way to do it using new technology? Like Jonathan talked a little bit about how to extract information from paper records. How do you see this? Can we use this new technology for trying to accelerate this, to have more data to this kind of projects? Because doing it manually, we take too much time. And of course, we are dealing with a situation right now, not only in Brazil, but because of pandemic in various museums. So it's probably going to be very hard to find money. It's already hard to keep museums open in this situation, and even harder to find money for specific projects. So if you can share with us some ideas, I think it would be great. Thank you. I think we can start in the same order, if you don't mind. So Alexei, Jonathan, Claudio, and Luciana.
I don't think I can add something useful enough at this moment. So I'll pass to Jonathan, who will probably have more things to say.
Well, I can only offer some stray thoughts. I think that for lots of smaller institutions that aren't, big like the Rijksmuseum or MoMA or the Louvre or places like that, people really want systems. They want off-the-shelf software that they can use that will implement these things. So that a software might be undergirded or built on CRM, but the average user doesn't see it. It just looks like a database to them. But that's a long ways away. That's a long ways away, and I don't know that we can offer much before then. I think with tools like OpenRefine and with sites like the Getty's vocabularies, that there is slowly a growing appreciation for quality data, for data standardization, and for clean data. And I think that all helps because, as we know, that if we have clean data, it's not hard to translate it into CRM. The hard part is getting the data in the spreadsheet to begin with. But so many, organizations, they don't know what to do until you hand them the nice, tidy piece of software.
Thank you, Jonathan. Claudio, do you want to share something?
Yes, of course. I think there's a lot of tools people from museums can use, but I think a very important component that it could be considered is we need a very strong educational program to talk about which is in Mexico, for example, we need to explain what is a metadata. Some people from museum doesn't understand and doesn't even know what it is. And of course, I mean, a very abstract and a very important component is a lot of will. I mean, voluntary, no? That's it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So guys, we don't have any more questions from the audience. So I want to thank you very much. It was a great panel, great session. Thank you very much for your presentations. And thank you, the audience, for the questions. It was a really nice debate. So thank you very much. See you in another opportunity. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank
Yes,
you,
thank you.
Gabriel.